For one thing, you're lucky that we had Honest John up here, because if it were me, when somebody said, you know, we've noticed that the golden brown algae is way down, I would have said, yeah, that's ESLA at work. Send your donations. Fine. He is the guy who's honest about it. The reason I want to talk about the lawsuit is at the board meeting this morning, we talked, oh, wait a minute. Oh, has he got it up? Okay, I guess that's off. Well, here, I'm going to quickly do this. People don't understand that they think the lawsuit is over because we won the liability phase. And that's the phase where we went to court and we said Burnett is undertaking their processing in such a way that they are spraying water up on hills that has all sorts of pollutants in it, and it's finding its way down into a wetland, and from there it's finding its way down a creek and is going into Elk Lake. And therefore they are polluting Elk Lake. That was our claim. Burnett's claim was, no, we're not doing any of that. They're absolutely wrong. And all the tests they've got to show it, all the research, it's all wrong. And so that the first phase of that trial was to establish if there's liability. Were we telling the truth, or was Burnett telling the truth? The judge found that everything that we said was absolutely right, and everything that they said was, what do you think? Absolutely wrong. And not only was it wrong, but they continued doing it. And so now we're in the damages phase, where we are asking the court to do certain things in response and to take care of what they have been doing for so many years. And it involves things like, if they don't get a permit to do it, stop doing it. That's one thing. Also to test the earth to make sure that it's not containing all this stuff, to measure what's going on. So that's what we're doing right now. And of course, Burnett is saying, well, because we weren't doing anything, and we still haven't admitted we do anything, we shouldn't have to do any of this stuff. And so that's going to take another few months to get that done. And so really, I'm kind of turning you on to ESLA missionaries. And so when you're out talking with people, if the subject comes up, the suit is not over. We, ESLA, so far, are absolute winners in this, and we're very confident that no matter how much longer it takes, we're going to continue to do it, and we're going to prevail, and it's going to protect the waters of Elk Lake. So, thank you.
Okay, this is a plug from me. I'm Linda Spelsack, John's wife. And I just want to say we're so happy to have all you here. You know, we didn't get the chance to stay because there wasn't a formal opening. Also, if you are here as somebody's guest or you're not a member, please just become a member of ESLA. I know Mussels are maybe not that interesting and maybe somebody dragged you here. But also if you have neighbors who are not members, tell them about ESLA. Tell them what you're learning. Tell them why it's important, because you know, without our waters, none of us would be here at all. So, just a little plug for membership, and back to you.
Thank you. He's very close. He's got to figure out how we can now change the slides. He's got it up there. Anybody have any other questions that you might have about whatever? No. Well, yeah. Well, are there any projects you want us to do that you were thinking about? Well, I do have to tell you one. This is a really good one. What I call the Narrows is between Elk and Skegemog. So over time, on the Skegemog Point, which is the one that comes up from the south, there's been a rocky reef that's been building up, and it's sticking out now into the Narrows, into Lake Skegemog. And I don't know why it went in that direction, but I did get my boat stuck on it a few years ago. I had to get out of the boat to drag it off because I couldn't use my prop. And then we've got the stumps and logs on the other side. So we have applied for permit for the DNR to put buoys there, and they will be lighted buoys because there is traffic at night, and that will keep people from. There's been a number of boats that ran aground on that reef this summer, tore up their props. So we're going to have those. Those will be probably next year. They'll probably be out there. I think that's a good. Yeah. Well, Funny you should ask. So I was up with Tip Mitt and the Lake Walloon Association. You can't see this, but I'll show it to you. But they created this trifold which tells people on Lake Walloon where you should use your wake boat. 500 feet from shore, 20 feet of water. So there's a map, there's a lot of information. So I talked to the president there. I said, hey, can we just kind of rip this off and do it for our lakes? He said, of course you can do that. So we just finished. Our communications expert over here, Rebecca Kinney, raise your hand. She's videoing this thing. She just sent me this sample, which I'm going to be meeting with the Elk-Skegemog Marina next week. Ask them to give this, because they rent wake boats. They have a couple. And hopefully give them to the people that rent. And this one say basically where it's in Elk Lake only. We do not recommend wake boats on Skegemog. It's way too shallow. It'll just churn up the bottom and really hurt the fishing on that lake. That's the best fishing lake. There's a lot of good vegetation, and it's too shallow for wake boats. So the middle of Elk is okay, middle of Torch. But that's what this just came today. So thanks for reminding me that one. Are we ready? Okay. We got it going now, folks. This is Joe Rathbun. He's had a career as a biologist, fisheries biologist, an expert on mussels, all kinds of mussels, I guess. But I'm just going to hand it over to Joe.
Can you hear me without this? No. Okay. So, let's see. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for Samantha for mentioning it to me, and also last week hosting me on some mussel surveys we did on the two lakes, and also for teaching me how to correctly pronounce. Wait for it. Skegemog. I need to work on that still. So I've been doing mussels for about 40 years. I retired about 10 years ago. Did a lot of things along the way, dam removals and contaminated sediments and many things. But the one thing that people asked me for help with after I retired was freshwater mussels. So I've been helping watershed groups, lake associations, the state, the federal government do surveys around the state, and also down in Illinois, which is my home state, since I retired. And it's been a lot of fun. So I'm going to start out with a couple of questions that I always get with mussels before we get into the talk. And the first one is always, can you eat them? And the answer is yes, but I've never done it, and I understand they're very, very tough, very bland, and they take a long time to cook. But like most things in life, that is helped a lot by melted butter and garlic. So, I'm going to stand back here. It's kind of awkward, but it'll do. What else can I say about that? We'll be talking a lot about zebra mussels, sadly, and quaggas also. So just to start with some basics, there are about 1,000 species of freshwater mussels all around the world. They're on every continent except Antarctica. North America is one of the real hotspots for that. We have about 300 species here in North America. And within North America, the southeastern states are the real hotspots. This map shows the number of species. The number of species in each state. We have 42 here in Michigan. I'm always glad I don't work in Alabama. The map says they have 175. I think they're currently up to 180. You maybe have seen the field guide that we have for Michigan in the back. It's a fairly thin document. The field guide, quote unquote, field guide for Alabama is as thick as a phone book. The idea that the southeastern United States is a real hotspot for mussels also applies to just about everything else. They have more tree species than we do. They have more wildflowers than we do. They have more fish, reptiles, amphibians, pretty much everything. The closer you get to the tropics, the higher the species diversity for almost everything. Yeah. I think they're pretty interesting. They have interesting shapes, for one thing. This species. Yeah. The species there on the left is an Asian species called the coxcomb mussel. It's about as wide as a dinner plate. The species in the middle is native to Michigan and the eastern U.S. It's about as big as my fingertip. It's called the rayed bean. It is federally endangered. So they range in size from a fingertip to as big as a dinner plate. The two species on the right are also Asian species. That one in the upper right is the shark fin mussel, which is from the Mekong River in Vietnam. And the other species is from Japan. It does not have a common name, but that very thin shell, I always thought that was very interesting. So a variety of shapes. They're very, very important in freshwater ecosystems. You're familiar with zebra mussels, so they filter water. That's how they make their living. They feed by eating the tiny plants, the phytoplankton, the tiny animals, zooplankton, and also large bacteria that they filter out of the water column. Prior to zebra mussels arriving in the Great Lakes and later North America, it was estimated that the native mussels in Lake St. Clair, between Lake Huron and Lake Erie, turned over the entire volume of Lake St. Clair once or twice a month. Zebra mussels do it much faster because there are so many more of them. The aquatic ecosystems in North America were adapted to the native mussels, and the zebra mussels are so much more efficient and so much more numerous that when they filter the water column, they remove almost everything, and as I'm sure almost all of you know, that leaves very, very little food left over for larval fish, larval perch, larval walleye, etc. A good dense mussel bed, which might be on the order of 30 to 100 mussels per square meter. It looks a lot like a riffle in a stream. It's a pretty big substrate there. Very useful to certain species, fish species that like to spawn on hard surfaces, on rocks or on mussel shells. And also it's good habitat for larval aquatic insects, mayflies, stoneflies, caddisflies, etc., that are a very important food source for a lot of fish species. They themselves are food for a variety of animals, muskrats, otters, raccoons. A few birds, small freshwater mussels, are food for the southeast wading bird called a limpkin. And also for some fish, sturgeon, what do you call it here in the Great Lakes? Down in the southeast we call them croakers. Anyway, a variety of fish species. Thank you very much. There's our fish biologist right there. We used to work together. They also absorb carbon. Their shells are made of calcium carbonate. They get the carbon from the water column. The water column gets it from the atmosphere. And again, a dense mussel bed of 30, 40, 50 per square meter will tie up, sequester as much carbon per year as a hardwood forest, like right up here, to the tune of several hundred grams per square meter per year. They're very, very endangered for a variety of reasons. Approximately 2/3 of the species in North America are either imperiled in one sense, endangered, threatened, or are already extinct. I do some volunteer work at a couple of museums down south, one in Grand Rapids, one in Ann Arbor, and I'm sorting mussel collections and things like that. I'm constantly finding shells that were collected from species that went extinct 100 years ago. That's always sad, but dams interfere. I'll be getting into the reproductive cycle in just a second. They utilize one or more species of fish as part of their life cycle. It's a host fish, talk about that in a second. If the migration of the host fish is limited by dams, that can cause the local extinction, the extirpation of mussel populations upstream of the dam. We see that all the time. If we take out a dam, the mussel populations, given time, 10, 20 years, will start to increase upstream of the dam. I heard somebody mention dams. Is there a dam issue around here?
Well, the Elk Rapids dam here is for hydroelectric.
Yeah.
There's also a spillway
Yeah.
that allows some water to get into the bay, and that is kind of eroding and that needs to be repaired.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah. That the dam otherwise is
The dam
a good
itself
shape.
is fine.
It's good shape, yeah.
But the spillway is
Okay.
So they're removing the rough concrete. Okay.
Oh, how tall is that?
That's not a huge dam, but it was built a long time ago. It was too hydroelectric.
Yeah.
Gas work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hasn't done that for a long time.
Yeah.
But that dam up there, Red Pond, it's got, well, invasive curly pond,
Okay.
and it's got a lot of sediment that built up and built up and it's
Yeah, yeah, but you probably know the state will require you to analyze the sediments. That's pretty straightforward. I used to assess that kind of data and actually collect, when I was a consultant, collect those kind of samples all around the Midwest. And I used to teach about that actually for the University of Wisconsin for 13 years. If you want to talk about it sometime, I'd be happy to chat.
CRA is managing that.
They're very good, yeah. I'm guessing you probably don't have much in the way of contaminants around that, except maybe arsenic. Is there a lot of limestone around here? Yeah. Arsenic occurs naturally with limestone. They know how to handle that, so. Anyway, dams, a problem for freshwater mussels. And over-harvesting too, we'll get to that in a second. Zebra mussels, like I say, they're the #1 problem for mussels these days. I was telling somebody here, if you made a list of the 50 most experienced mussel biologists in Michigan, only 3 of us started before zebra mussels arrived. So only a handful of us know what it used to look like in our rivers and lakes. Yeah. 2 of us are retired, the 3rd soon will be. Yeah. They're interesting. In some cultures in the southeastern U.S., it is tradition to place mussel shells, clam shells on grave sites, particularly grave sites where the family may not have the money to buy a headstone. They like to mark the grave site. They hope they'll find it in generations to come. So they collect a bunch of clam shells, paint them white, and cover the surface of the grave with clam shells. This is down in Kentucky. I mentioned over-harvesting. Prior to the invention of plastics, right around World War II or a little after, shirt buttons and blouse buttons were made of freshwater mussel shells. I'll pass some around. Here's some buttons, and they would stamp the circular buttons out of the clamshell, the mussel shell. And this was a very big business in the upper Midwest, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan. Often, farmers in rural areas in the summer, when they weren't busy planting or harvesting, would go out to local rivers and collect as many clams as they could, particularly the big shelled species, and sell them to the button manufacturers. There were button factories all over the upper Midwest. There were at least a dozen in Michigan. It took me about 40 years. They're all gone now. They went out of business in the 40s when plastic came along. It took me 40 years to find the location of one of them down around Pawpaw. And I found, passing around here, a lot of these punched out mussel shells. That really seriously depleted the mussel populations wherever there was a button factory nearby. And so the southwest part of the Lower Peninsula lost a lot of mussels 100 years ago or so. They seem to have since rebounded pretty nicely, but we're not entirely sure. We didn't have good quantitative surveys of those populations 100 years ago. This, that mound in the lower right is mussel shells, outside the factory. Mussels have an interesting reproductive cycle. There are males and females, like most animals. They live in the water. The male releases sperm into the water column. The female, in the course of filtering to get oxygen and get food, takes the sperm in to her body, and the sperm fertilizes eggs that are attached to her gill filaments at one end of the thing. The fertilized eggs form little tiny larvae. The upper right picture is a picture of the larvae that are attached to fish gills. And the mother, the female mussel, will hold those little larvae, they're called glochidia, with her gills for several months, and then release them at an appropriate time of year when an appropriate species of fish is nearby and might come in contact with them. They will then live on the gills of the mussel, or the fish, for 2 or 3 weeks, then drop off and start their life cycle as a mussel. I was going to show you some videos, and I'm going to try to do that now on the backup computer. Thanks a lot for that. Let's see. Oh, it doesn't seem to like that. Yeah, sure, exactly. This is a stuffed box mussel, federally endangered, very small. Lives in the gravel, looks kind of like a rock. Its host fish is the log perch, which has a habit of turning over pieces of gravel to look for aquatic insects underneath them. It gets caught. The female snuff box closes on the skull of the log perch, shoots its larva in through the mouth of the log perch. The water goes out past its gills, and the larva attached to the gills. Log perch, for small riffle-dwelling fish, have an unusually thick skull. They're the only ones that can survive this. If the female snuff box catches another species, a green darter or something like that, or I don't know, it'll kill that fish because their skulls are not as thick as the log perch skull. Let's see if I can do another one. That one came up for a minute. There we go. Sorry that isn't big. This is a species we have here in Michigan, including up this way. The black sand shell. The white dots inside there that you see are the swollen gill filaments that contain the little larva. That waving bit of tissue, the female grows that seasonally when it's time to reproduce and draws in fish because it looks like a worm or something that seems to attract fish. The black sand shell can get pretty big. It can get almost a foot long. The snuff box in comparison is only about 1 inch or 2 inches long. Well, again, kind of small. This is the plain pocketbook, also a species you have up here. It has 2 little flaps of tissue at the top of the shell that look a lot like a minnow. It has eye spots, it has fins, and these swollen bit, you can't really, yeah, there you go. There's dark colored swollen gill filaments, that's where the Glaucidia larvae are. Again, it draws in fish that snap at that and get infested with the larva on its gills. Some species of mussel use I should pause. Does anybody have any questions as we're going through? Yeah.
The second and third ones you showed us.
Yeah.
Do the fish get caught?
No. Only, as far as we know, only the snuff box mussel catches its host fish. Yeah.
We usually think of mussels and clams, mollusks as having hard shells.
Yeah.
Hard outer body. You just showed some very flexible
Yeah.
parts of it. Is that unusual? or-
No, not really. You know, if you're just walking along and picking up clams or mussels, which by the way, in freshwater, clams and mussels are interchangeable terms. If you're just picking those up, they have closed themselves up and withdrawn the soft tissues that might be extending out. Sometimes, though, you'll see a foot sticking out. Pull it. Yeah. Another question? So anyway, some species, the more successful ones, the more common ones, can use a variety of fish species as a host. One of the ones we found, the giant floater, right there, has 24 known host fish species. Most likely it can use anything that has fins. The stuff box that I showed you a little bit ago that was catching that log perch, as far as we know, it only uses log perch. Every mussel species in the world has one or more host fish, except one species we have here in Michigan which uses the mud puppy salamander instead of a fish. The salamander mussel. They get around, the mussels get around within lakes and rivers by hanging onto a fish for several weeks and then dropping off passively. It's kind of a crapshoot as to where they land, kind of random chance. On very rare occasions, there seems to be a mechanism to move mussels from one water body to the other. They will grab hold of turtle toes. That is a landing turtle there. And I don't know if any of you have ever been down by Hastings, the Pierce Cedar Creek nature area, lovely area. That's where that photograph is taken. And in 1878, a colleague of Charles Darwin's in America shot a blue-winged teal and discovered a mussel hanging off its foot. You see the drawing there. Darwin thought so much of that, he wrote an article for the British journal Nature in 1878 and described this. I'm not aware it's ever been seen since, probably has, but I thought that was pretty cool just knowing it was from Charles Darwin. And that drawing is pretty good. If it is accurate, it was in his original publication, you can identify that mussel. It is one of the few mussels that is it's in the northeastern U.S. and also in Michigan called the Eastern Elliptica. You have a lot of them up here in your rivers. That's all I have for their ecology and life cycle and things. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Is there such a thing as a good mussel and a bad mussel?
I can't imagine, the question was, are there good and bad mussels? I can't imagine bad mussels. I mean, they don't, unlike zebra mussels, they don't clog drinking water pipes or make a mess on dock pilings or anything like that. There are, besides zebra mussels and quagga mussels, yes. In Europe, there are a couple of Asian freshwater mussels that seem to be moving quite rapidly across Europe and displacing the native mussels that are there. There's another mussel here in North America that we have called the golden mussel. It's kind of like a zebra mussel. It's found currently only on the West Coast. We're worried about it. Actually, on Monday, I had lunch with a colleague and we were talking about it. They have set up a monitoring program here in Michigan to watch for it and are training their biologists to recognize it. Yeah.
You're gonna talk about the zebra mussels and Elk-Skegemog?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. So we did some surveys this past week with Samantha and Adeline and on both lakes. Describe that. The results of that in a minute, it won't take too long. You can do it by wading, you can do it by snorkeling, or in deeper water, you do it by scuba diving. That's pretty logical. Typically, you survey a known surface area, X number of square meters or something, and calculate densities that way. We use glass bottom buckets that are quite handy. Or snorkeling. And we typically measure the length of the mussel, which is an approximation of its age using little cheap plastic calipers. Sometimes it's really easy to find mussels that are on the very surface. Sometimes it's harder. You can see that where they've opened up, that their shell has been colonized by algae or sometimes aquatic insects. Sometimes they look a lot like rocks that are hard to tell. Right there is the mussel. And sometimes they're almost completely buried, and all you see is a little slit in the bottom that is the mussel filtering and getting oxygen and food. And a few species are buried 100% of the time. You never find them at the surface. Also, mussels bury in the wintertime. If you get a permit to go out and do surveys for mussels, the season runs from June 1st to October 15th. It's about to change to May 15th to October 15th because of climate change. It's getting warmer. Because otherwise, in the colder months, a large number of the mussels will have buried themselves, and they'll be hard to find, and it's hard to get a good estimate of their number if you're out there when it's cold. We have field guides. As of the first edition was published in 2000, so it's only been 6 years. We're now coming up on the third edition because we keep handing them out. I can't believe that. I figured I'm a co-author on it, and we printed up originally something like 800, and I thought, well, these are going to live in my basement forever. And I knew my mom wanted one, but I wasn't sure anybody else. And so we've since done a second edition because we ran out, and now we're doing a third edition. Just briefly, there are characteristics of the shell, the exterior of the shell that help you identify it. It's the color, it's the texture of the shell. Are there bumps? Is it smooth? Is there a wing? Is it mostly round or is it kind of elongate? There's a couple of characteristics inside the shell too that are useful. The color of the inside of the shell and the teeth that are there in that lower illustration. The details of those are useful. Fortunately, most of the characteristics that are useful to identify mussels are on the outside of the mussel. So if you have a live one, you're good. A brief mention of rivers versus inland lakes. The number of mussels, the density of mussels can be equally high in lakes and rivers, but the species diversity is much higher in rivers. That's because fish diversity is higher. You don't get the darters and such in lakes. And also the bottom substrate, the mud, the sand, the silt, the gravel, is more diverse, more patchy in rivers than in lakes. It's more homogeneous in lakes for the most part. So yeah, for example, the Grand River has 31 species. Most inland lakes have 0 to 5. But the density's been very high. A few years ago, I helped Lake Superior State survey an artificial lake, a reservoir the Upper Peninsula. In 4 days, we found 6,600 mussels, and they were all the same species though. So species diversity is very low, floaters. This is an example of 2 lakes. These are 2 actually reservoirs behind dams. And the distribution around the perimeter is very hard to predict. Here, the one there on the left has a very local hotspot with hundreds and hundreds of mussels per square meter, or well, not per square meter, but per sampled cell, and very low numbers elsewhere. The one on the right has high numbers everywhere around the whole perimeter of the reservoir. These reservoirs are 2 miles apart. So it's hard to predict ahead of time how many mussels you're going to have. We're going to just have to get out and look. Results. We surveyed 7 locations around the southern 2/3, 3/4 of the lake. We found 2 mussels at one spot, 1 mussel, a total of 4 mussels.
Okay, can I?
Yes, please.
This is something that we were talking about before. We used to call them clams.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm glad that you said that, because I thought maybe you were just naming them.
No, I was originally a marine biologist, and in marine biology, clams and mussels are 2 different things. And freshwater, frankly, they were named mussels, I think by Carl Linnaeus 300 years ago, 400 years ago, and that has stuck. It shouldn't have. They originally evolved from marine clams, not marine mussels, and about 350 million years ago in the Triassic. And so they should be called clams, but at the very start, the first person to work on them called them mussels, and it has stuck for no good reason ever since.
So, I mean, like on the East Coast, you go clamming, are those the mussels and clams, are they all the same?
No, in the marine world, the clams, like our mussels, are free living. They aren't attached to pilings or anything, as opposed to the edible mussel, which was actually photographed on the little flyer that was made for this talk. That was a marine mussel, and it, like a zebra mussel, attaches to pilings or rocks or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
If mussels, you said you're on the 3rd edition, but if mussels aren't edible, what's all the interest?
That's a good question. I don't really know. But a couple years before we published the first edition of the guide of the book, the poster back there that you might have seen when you came in, Michigan Natural Features Inventory made that, and people realized how many species we had, and they're kind of interesting in different sizes. That generated a little interest. And then we published the book to help people figure out what they were looking at. That helped a lot too, but most recently, and most importantly probably, if you're doing a bridge construction project or you're taking out a dam, you're going to have to do a mussel survey. It's now required by the state. And if necessary, you'll have to move them. You'll have to relocate them. And starting last year, consultants who do that work were required to pass an identification test based on the book and the poster. And so that has triggered a lot of interest. The people who work on mussels for a living now have to show they know what they're looking at. And some older reports clearly, no. I've read reports by good people 40 years ago. They misidentified everything. So, but regulation really triggered a lot of, and we teach mussel identification workshops, mostly down in Ann Arbor. Yeah.
Do mussels ingest microplastics?
Yes. Yes, they do. Central Michigan University has a grad student working on that. I don't know what they're finding, but they definitely ingest the microplastics. Could be. Well, yeah. Negative impact on the mussel, but maybe not. Maybe it's inert. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. Yep.
You mentioned up there on your slide about very few natives. How about zebra mussels?
You know, there weren't as many zebra mussels as I expected, and have you guys, you've been on the lake, some cases, there's a lot less. I'm going to come to that in 2 slides. I had this lunch meeting I had with the state guy We were discussing that. That is happening everywhere in the country. If after 30 years or so, the zebra mussels populations start to decline. We don't know why. We're guessing there might be some kind of virus that has also come over in the ballast water with the freighters and is now starting to catch up with the zebra mussels and causing mortality, but we really don't know why. But they are dying out in a lot of places around the country. Not yet with quaggas, as near as we can tell, but quaggas came here later in the game than zebras. Yeah.
That's why I wonder, suggest that quaggas are something replacing zebra mussels.
Probably
We're
are.
not as fussy about water.
Oh, I turn off what?
We're not as fussy about water.
That is correct. Yeah.
Did you survey the northern end?
We did not. No, I don't know why we didn't go up there. There is one record, I just learned this. iNaturalist, if you're familiar with iNaturalist, a photo-based species identification thing, it's an app. Just recently, a couple of years ago, somebody reported the fat buckets in the very northern end of the lake. So, a species we found there too. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, my understanding is that zebra mussels are in shallow water as far as the
That seems to be true. No one really knows why, but yeah, that's true. Yeah. They're very, very common in Lake Michigan and Huron in the deeper waters, and zebras are still in the very shallows. Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Looking at your slide here, we happen to live about where the net zero is.
Okay.
When we first moved up our Aquatic Cottage, our shoreline had all kind of,
Yeah.
3-4 inch mussels,
Yeah.
empty shells,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
all over the place. Can't find them anymore.
No, they're not. They were killed by the zebra mussels 30 years ago, I don't know, and have not yet colonized. There was another question that I'll come back to that. Yeah.
If you're gonna cover this, you explained it, but I wonder about the process by which mussels clarify the water and what kind of environmental impact we're seeing that the implications from the zebra and quagga mussels here.
Oh, the zebras and quaggas in high numbers
Right.
can filter the water more efficiently.
What do they filter exactly?
Oh, exactly the same thing as native mussels. A large bacteria, the tiny plants, phytoplankton, the tiny animals, zooplankton.
Right. So my question is, how does that increase insect population?
Oh, it's simple physical substrate. If you have a sandy, mostly sandy bottom, that is not going to be home to too many mayflies and caddisflies and such. Whereas if you have either, some fist-sized rocks there in a riffle, or fist-sized mussel shells closely packed, that gives them a solid substrate to live on. And more aquatic insect larvae like to live on solid substrates than sandy.
So the decline in phytoplankton and zooplankton we're seeing in the lakes has nothing to do with mussels?
Oh no, it does. It totally does.
So how does that in turn affect insect population?
In rivers, I don't believe it does, because there's not a lot of.
Sickness in the bay.
Yeah, in lakes in the bay, aquatic insects. Somebody correct me if you think I'm wrong. Aquatic insect larvae populations are not as dense in lakes and than compared to rivers, and so I don't think. And also, those aquatic insects often don't eat suspended zooplankton and phytoplankton. A few caddisflies do. Yeah, a few caddisflies do, but most of them are grazing on the algae that grows on the rocks or the outside of the mussel shell.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a different kind of algae altogether.
Yeah, we're sorry.
Just a couple. I'm going to get back to this. Zebra mussels are declining everywhere, at least in the upper Midwest right now. I had lunch with a colleague who actually made the poster in the back. He works for the Michigan Natural Features Inventory. And we were talking about that phenomenon and how it seems to be true here in these lakes. We're wondering if it's time to there are like fish hatcheries, there are mussel hatcheries in a few places that will breed mussels and produce thousands of them. Maybe it's time to start bringing back, as a start, 100 or so of a common species, like either one of these, and put them in lakes that have declining zebra mussel populations and see if they live long enough to reproduce at least, and that's typically 3 or 4 or 5 years, and how long they live after that. Will they be, you see that one, that's a fat bucket there with a single zebra mussel on it. And we found other, of the few live ones we found, or even the dead shells, typically had 2 or 3 or 4, not that you saw it in the back where there's hundreds of zebra mussels on that specimen back there, which was collected in the 1980s. So is it time to start doing that kind of experiment? And if they live long enough to reproduce a few times and start increasing their populations, maybe we can think about reintroducing freshwater mussels to lakes where we know, based on just anecdotal evidence, like you all living around it, that the zebra mussels are declining. I don't know. I want to talk, we have a committee of mussel biologists in the state. We meet every spring. I'm going to bring that up with these folks at state, federal universities, and suggest that. And it'd be a wonderful master's project for somebody, I think. So,
The only thing is what concerns me is, there's just not enough food.
right.
Any mussels.
I am concerned about that too.
And whether zebra or quad.
Yeah.
Why was it doing okay, the deeper waters?
I wonder if the near shore, because the zebra mussels are declining, is the food concentration going up? I don't know. Doesn't look like it. It looks really clear to me. But yeah, well, that'd be something to investigate. Pick a lake. Don't pick a lake that's crystal clear. You're going to have to get a lake that has a decent population of phytoplankton and zooplankton. Yeah.
That's my question were zebra mussels bad for the lake ecology and why? And are quagga mussels going to be bad or worse for the lake ecology and why?
Quaggas, I don't know about worse, but they are just as bad in my opinion. They have the same filtration. They were.
Filtering more bad.
They are so good at it, much better than the native mussels, that they remove so much phytoplankton and zooplankton that larval fish are now starving. Perch, walleye, etc. You know more about that than I do.
So
Yeah.
tell us more about that.
Oh, well, let's see, what can I say about that? You know, I've never seen, you might have, some data on plankton populations in lakes immediately after zebra mussels colonize them. And to compare to prior to zebra mussel colonization, and what were the populations of phytoplankton and zooplankton lower?
Well, so some of the problems, like states tries to stop, brown trout, whatever, the brown trout, their efforts the last couple of years are powerful, because there's nothing for the young brown trout to eat.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just not put it there. I mean,
Right.
The mussels that are there, eating everything, that's, I think, keeping up brown trout. Certainly.
Yeah.
So we're looking at like the future of like fishless lakes. I mean, like how
Well, no, not necessarily. Continue fertilizing the lawn.
Yeah.
Different things about, but no, it's like everything, it's time for change. We don't. Like John said, zebra mussels, quagga mussels, and maybe, hopefully, the natives will come back.
right? When the crawfish like
Crayfish, yes, they've disappeared. Elk-Skegemog, right? You see them all over the place. That's more of a need.
I was just curious, because we're talking about this and we're noticing this information, what can we do about it?
Yeah, if your lake's already infested with either zebra or quaggas, it's too late. Other places, I've been surveying lakes with, for the Grand Traverse Regional Lake Conservancy around Traverse City and Calcasieu. So a lot of them, small ones, don't have zebra mussels yet because they really strictly control boat access, outside boats. That's really, really important. I've also been surveying lakes the last 3 years up in the Huron Mountain Club, west of Marquette. They also strictly restrict who can bring their boat in, and they actually don't allow anybody from the outside the club, or even inside the club, to bring a boat in. They provide boats for people right there. Yeah. So if you don't have zebra mussels or quagga mussels, do everything you can to keep the boats clean and cross your fingers. If you do have them, so far it's too late. I was talking to somebody here. The zebra mussels, quagga mussels also colonize rocky reefs in the Great Lakes that whitefish in particular love to spawn on. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has started some little studies, and they're going to expand it next year in Lake Michigan, where they go out to these large rocky reef areas that are colonized by zebra mussels, and which apparently is not a good habitat for the whitefish to lay their eggs. They cover them with tarps and leave that there for about a year. That kills the zebra mussels. I haven't heard about quaggas. And when you move the tarp off, the limited studies over several years show that the zebra mussels aren't coming back very quickly. So maybe you'll get a few years or a decade of successful whitefish reproduction before you have to do that again. That's the only thing I've heard that's working. I mean, copper sulfate kills them, but copper sulfate kills everything. So,
So the quagga and the zebra came from eastern Europe.
The Baltic, yeah.
And do any of the mussels that are native here become invasive over there?
Excellent question. No, none of them ever have that as far as is known. In Europe, they are getting some Asian freshwater mussels that are, for aquaculture purposes, were brought into, especially some of the, what shall I say, the less well-developed Eastern European countries like Bulgaria, Romania, and so on. And those are spreading quite rapidly and slowly going west into Germany, and et cetera. And also that's a couple of species, the same species, have been brought into South America for the same reason. Aquaculture got away, escaped, and are now colonizing some of the rivers and lakes in South America. They could come here, they could totally come here. They haven't yet, as far as we know.
What's the status of the regulation of ballast water?
You know, I don't know that. I thought they passed a law requiring freighters, when they come across the ocean, to, as soon as they get into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, where it's fresh, they discharge that water and replace it with fresh water, and then come into the upper Great Lakes, the Great Lakes proper.
They've also put a requirement to have treatment systems.
Oh, good.
On the discharge of ballast.
That's even better, yeah. You treat it with chlorine, and yeah, that would take care of it. And the chlorine would dissipate very quickly. All right, last couple slides. Skegemog, got that right. we surveyed, we looked in a lot of places. We surveyed in 4 places and didn't find anything. Yeah. Now, like I said, I've done work in big lakes that don't have zebra mussels. Elk Lake, anyway. 9 miles long, something like that. I've worked in reservoirs that were similar. Elk Lake should have 1 million plus native mussels, and it probably has 1,000 or something like that. So, yes, I was very sorry to not be able to find anything.
Something come along and replace them, and over time, as these other things get killed off.
Possibly, they might recolonize the
Recolonize.
lakes, yes. Because it,
Down the rivers, like Fulton,
that's right, that's right.
other places.
Yeah. Not in our lifetimes, probably, without assistance. But the food issue is really key, so. Yeah. It's been depressing to be a mussel biologist for the last 10 years or so.
I volunteer shelter over in Sutton's Bay, and we daily take samples with kids on tours.
Uh-huh.
We take samples at the bottom,
Yeah.
and we don't find hardly any live zebra mussels.
Oh.
Hardly any. We bring up shells and
Mhm.
dead. And same if you walk along the shore here,
Yeah.
on the eastern shore of Grand Traverse Bay.
Okay.
You find a lot of colonized, clung together, dead ones.
Yes.
With hardly any zebra
Right.
live. So they really, as you said, seem to be declining almost everywhere.
They do in the Great
Robins
Plains.
are healthy.
Yeah.
And that's probably because they're out of food.
It's quite possible. Or a disease has come in through that previous ballast water and is spreading through them, but not hitting the natives. It's hard to know, but they definitely are declining. Hard to know why, but they definitely are declining. It'd be interesting to see elsewhere in the country. I showed that map a moment. The colonizations out west are more recent, and it'll be interesting to see in 20 years from now they start to decline out there too.
What is your slide showing us?
Ah, you really can't see it because we need it to be darker. That is a natural, as mussels move, which they do sometimes, it made that trail and it made it like a question mark. So that's all I have. So,
Thanks, Joe, very much. One other comment about the whitefish and the quaggas. Heather Hettinger was our first speaker this year at the May shore thing, talk about fisheries, and she said that her sampling of fish, they're finding only adult whitefish. They're never finding juvenile whitefish. And the theory is that the quaggas are eating all of that zooplankton and phytoplankton, but that the larvae of the whitefish need to eat, and they're not reproducing. So it's all just large whitefish that are still around. And as you know, I don't think there's much commercial whitefish on Lake Michigan. They're not existent in Elk and Torque. And I think all the whitefish that we get is probably from Lake Superior, I believe. I don't think anything is coming from Lake Michigan anymore in the grocery stores or the restaurants. So that's what I know about that.
Something will come along and players start eating more.
We don't know.
Any
Okay,
recycling here?
Joe, thanks so much for, enjoying this.